Get out! Richard Hartwell's voice shattered the silence. His hand trembled as he grabbed the medical chart and threw it across the room. You're fired. Every single one of you. The head nurse stepped forward. Mr. Hartwell, please. Please what? Richard swept everything off the nearest table. Glass shattered. Metal clattered against marble. My daughters are dying, 7 years old. And you stand there with your useless degrees and your useless medicine telling me there's nothing you can do. His legs gave out. He hit the floor hard, his palms slapping cold marble. And Richard Hartwell, the man who controlled $12 billion, who hadn't cried in 20 years, who buried his wife without shedding a single tear, broke completely. Before we continue, I want to ask you to subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the very end. Leave a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels, because what happens next will change everything you believe about hope and miracles. Richard didn't know how long he stayed on that floor. The nurses left one by one. Nobody tried to help him up. Nobody said a word. They just disappeared like ghosts, leaving him alone with the sound of 3 heart monitors beeping in the background. He forced himself to stand. His hands were bleeding from the broken glass. He didn't care. Daddy? The small voice cut through his chest like a blade. He turned. Emma, his firstborn, had her eyes open. She was watching him from her hospital bed tubes in her arms, her bald head pale against the white pillow. Daddy, why are you crying? Richard wiped his face roughly. I'm not crying, sweetheart. Yes, you are. Emma's voice was weak but certain. You never cry. Are we dying? The question hit him like a physical blow. He walked toward her bed, his legs unsteady. No, baby. No. I won't let that happen. Dr. Reynolds said we have 2 weeks. Emma's eyes were too old for a 7-year-old. I heard her. She thought I was sleeping, but I heard everything. Richard grabbed the bed rail so hard his knuckles went white. Dr. Reynolds doesn't know everything. She's the best doctor in the country. You said so yourself. I was wrong. Emma stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned her head away. I'm tired, Daddy. I want to sleep now. Emma, please go away. The words destroyed him. His own daughter asking him to leave. But he understood. He'd been leaving them for months, hiding in his office, making phone calls, chasing solutions that didn't exist. He'd been so busy trying to save them that he'd forgotten to be with them. Okay, sweetheart. His voice cracked. I'll go, but I'll come back. I promise. Emma didn't respond. She kept her face turned toward the wall. Richard walked out of the medical wing. His chest felt hollow. His hands were still bleeding. He didn't bother to clean them. Margaret was waiting in the hallway. She'd worked for the family for 15 years. She'd seen everything, but even she looked shaken. Mr. Hartwell, your hands. It's nothing. Sir, please let me. I said it's nothing. Richard kept walking. Then he stopped. Margaret. Yes, sir. Cancel all the interviews. The new nurses, the specialists, everyone. Cancel everything. Margaret's face went pale. Sir, we need someone to help with the girls. You can't just... I can do whatever I want. It's my house, my money, my daughters. And they're dying, sir. Margaret's voice broke. They need care. Professional care. Richard spun around. Professional care? I've spent $15 million on professional care. I've flown in doctors from every country in the world. And where has it gotten us? 2 weeks. That's what the professionals gave us. 2 weeks. So what do you want to do? Just give up? Maybe. The word came out before Richard could stop it. Maybe giving up is all that's left. Margaret stared at him. In 15 years, she'd never seen him like this. Richard Hartwell didn't give up. Richard Hartwell fought. Richard Hartwell won. There's a woman here, Margaret said quietly. She arrived this morning for the aide position. Send her away. Sir, at least meet her. Please. Why? What's the point? She'll take one look at those girls and run like everyone else. She won't. Margaret's voice was certain. I've already spoken with her. She's different. Different how? I don't know how to explain it. She's just different. Richard laughed bitterly. Different won't save my daughter's Margaret. Maybe not. But what if it does? The question hung in the air. Richard wanted to dismiss it. He wanted to walk away, lock himself in his office, and wait for the end. But something in Margaret's voice stopped him. Fine, he said. Bring her to me, but I'm not promising anything. Margaret nodded and hurried away. Richard walked to the grand staircase and stopped at the top, looking down at the marble foyer below. This house had cost him $40 million. It had 32 rooms, a private medical wing, a helipad, everything money could buy. And none of it mattered. Footsteps echoed below. Margaret appeared, followed by a woman Richard had never seen before. She was young, maybe 30. No designer clothes, no polished appearance. She wore faded jeans and a simple blue sweater. Her dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail. She carried a small bag over her shoulder, nothing more. Richard descended the stairs slowly, studying her. She didn't look away. She didn't fidget. She just stood there, calm as still water. You're the new aide. Richard's voice was cold. Grace Mitchell. She extended her hand. Richard ignored it. Why are you here? To help with your daughters. Help! Richard almost spat the word. Everyone wants to help. Nobody can. Maybe nobody's tried the right way. Richard stepped closer. He towered over her, using his height to intimidate. The right way, I've tried every way. Experimental treatments, clinical trials, alternative medicine. I even flew in a healer from Brazil who claimed he could cure cancer with his hands. You know what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Grace didn't flinch. I'm not a healer, Mr. Hartwell. Then what are you? Just someone who shows up. Shows up. Richard shook his head. My daughters don't need someone who shows up. They need a miracle. Maybe showing up is the miracle. Richard stared at her. The audacity of this woman. Standing in his house with nothing, no credentials, no experience, no reason to be here, speaking to him like she knew something he didn't. You have no idea what you're walking into, he said quietly. Those girls up there, they're dying. The doctors have given up. The nurses have given up. I've given up. And you think you can just show up and make a difference? Yes. One word. No hesitation. Richard felt something crack inside him. Anger, maybe. Or fear. He couldn't tell anymore. Why? His voice was barely a whisper. Why do you care about children you've never met? Grace was silent for a moment. Something flickered across her face there and gone. Pain, maybe. Or memory. Because everyone deserves someone who doesn't give up on them, she said finally. Even when everything looks hopeless. Especially when everything looks hopeless. Richard wanted to argue. He wanted to throw her out, lock the doors, and be alone with his grief. But he was so tired, so broken, so empty. Do what you want, he heard himself say. Stay or go. I don't care anymore. He turned and walked away. Mr. Hartwell. He stopped, but didn't turn around. Where are your daughters? Medical wing. 3rd floor, East Corridor. He paused. But I'm warning you, Miss Mitchell. Those girls have seen too many people walk in and walk out. If you're going to leave, do it now. Don't give them hope you can't deliver. I don't make promises I can't keep. Richard finally looked back at her. Everyone says that. I'm not everyone. Something in her voice made him pause, but he was too tired to question it. Margaret will show you the way, he said, and walked away. Grace watched him go. His shoulders were bent, his steps heavy. He moved like a man carrying the weight of the world. Miss Mitchell. Margaret touched her arm gently. This way, please. Grace followed her up the grand staircase through hallways lined with family photographs. She noticed how the pictures changed as they walked. Early ones showed a young couple radiant with joy. Then came 3 babies' identical faces wrapped in pink blankets. The woman in the photos disappeared somewhere around the baby's first birthday. "Their mother?" Grace asked quietly. Margaret's step faltered. "Mrs. Hartwell passed during childbirth. Complications. The doctors couldn't save her. And Mr. Hartwell buried himself in work, in money, in trying to control everything." Margaret shook her head. "He loves those girls more than life itself. That's the problem. He loves them so much, it's destroying him." They stopped outside a heavy wooden door. Margaret's hand hesitated on the handle. "Miss Mitchell, I need to warn you. Those girls haven't been the same since the diagnosis. Emma's become bitter. Lily's withdrawn. And Sophie—" Margaret's voice broke. "Sophie hasn't spoken in 3 days. She was always the fighter, the loud one. Now she barely opens her eyes. 3 days without speaking. The doctors say she's given up. That sometimes when children sense the end, they just go quiet." Grace felt something tighten in her chest. "She's 7 years old." "Leukemia doesn't care about age, Miss Mitchell." Margaret pushed open the door. The room was exactly what Grace expected. White walls, sterile smell, blackout curtains blocking every window, machines beeping in steady rhythm, and 3 hospital beds arranged in a row, each holding a small, fragile body. Grace walked forward slowly. The first girl's eyes snapped open. Emma. Grace recognized her from the photos downstairs, though those had shown a laughing child with golden curls. Now she was bald pale, and her eyes held the weight of someone far older. "Another one." Emma's voice was flat. "Let me guess. You're here to help." Grace stopped beside her bed. "I'm here to meet you." "Same thing. Everyone who comes wants to help. Then they see us, and they leave." "I'm not going to leave." That's what the last one said. And the one before that. And the one before that. Emma turned her head toward the window, though there was nothing to see but black curtains. "Just go away. Save yourself the trouble." "I don't want to go away." "Why not? We're dying. Haven't you heard 2 weeks? Maybe less. We're already ghosts." Grace pulled up a chair and sat down. "You don't look like a ghost to me." Emma turned back surprised. "What? Ghosts don't talk. Ghosts don't have opinions. Ghosts don't tell people to go away." Grace leaned forward. "You seem pretty alive to me, Emma." For a moment something flickered in Emma's eyes. Surprise. Maybe interest. Then the wall came back up. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right, I don't. But I'd like to." "Why?" "Because you seem interesting, and I like interesting people." Emma stared at her. Nobody had called her interesting in months. They called her brave. They called her poor thing. They called her tragic. But not interesting. "You're weird," Emma said finally. "I've been called worse." The girl in the middle bed stirred. Lily. She had softer features than Emma, gentler eyes. "Emma, who are you talking to?" "Nobody. Just another helper who's going to leave." Lily turned her head toward Grace. "Are you going to leave?" "No." "Promise." "I promise." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Everyone promises. Nobody stays." Grace reached out and took Lily's hand. The girl flinched, but didn't pull away. "I know it's hard to believe," Grace said softly. "I know you've been hurt. I know people have let you down. But I'm not leaving. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not until we die." Emma's voice was bitter. "Not until you tell me to go." The room went quiet. Even the machines seemed to pause. Emma broke the silence. "Sophie won't talk to you. She won't even look at you. She's given up completely." Grace turned toward the third bed. The smallest girl lay perfectly still. Her breathing was shallow, barely visible. Her eyes were closed. She looked more like a doll than a child. "Can I sit with her anyway?" Grace asked. "Why bother? She can't hear you." "Maybe she can. Maybe she just needs someone to listen for a while." Grace moved her chair to Sophie's bedside. She reached out and took the girl's hand. It was cold. Too cold. Like holding ice. "Hi, Sophie," Grace said quietly. "I'm Grace. I know you're tired. I know everything feels heavy right now. But I want you to know something." She paused, studying Sophie's pale face. "You're not alone. I'm right here. And I'm not going anywhere." Nothing. No response. Not even a flutter of eyelids. Grace began to hum. A soft melody. A lullaby from somewhere deep in her memory. Something her mother had sung to her long ago. Something she'd sung to Mia when Mia was sick, when Mia was dying, when Mia finally let go. The memory cut through her like glass. But she kept humming. Minutes passed. 5, 10, 20. Emma and Lily watched in silence. They'd seen nurses come and go. Doctors come and go. Everyone always left when Sophie didn't respond. But this woman just sat there holding Sophie's hand, humming the same soft melody over and over. Then it happened. Sophie's fingers moved. It was tiny, almost invisible. Just a slight twitch, but Grace felt it. "Sophie!" Grace leaned closer. "I felt that. I know you're in there. You don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything. Just know that I'm here. I'm not leaving." Sophie's fingers moved again. This time they curled around Grace's hand. Weak, barely there, but unmistakable. "Oh my God!" Lily sat up in her bed. "She moved. Emma, she moved." Emma's eyes went wide. "That's impossible. She hasn't moved in 3 days." Grace didn't look away from Sophie. Sometimes people just need to know someone's there. That's all. The door burst open. Richard stood in the doorway, his face pale. He'd been listening outside. He'd heard everything. "What did you do?" His voice shook. "What did you do to her?" "I held her hand, Mr. Hartwell." "That's it. You just held her hand. And I told her she wasn't alone." Richard walked forward slowly, as if approaching something sacred. He looked at Sophie's hand wrapped around Grace's fingers. His youngest daughter, his fighter, the one who hadn't moved, hadn't spoken, hadn't responded to anything in 3 days. "Sophie," he whispered. "Sophie, baby, can you hear me?" Nothing. Her eyes stayed closed. Her breathing stayed shallow, but her hand stayed wrapped around Grace's. "She's holding on," Grace said quietly. "She just needed something to hold on to." Richard's eyes met Grace's. In that moment, something passed between them. Not understanding, not trust, just recognition. Two broken people standing in the same storm. "How did you know?" Richard asked. "How did you know what she needed?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely audible. "Because I've been where she is. A long time ago." She didn't explain. Richard didn't ask. He pulled up another chair and sat down on Sophie's other side. He reached out and touched his daughter's face. Cold. Too cold. "I'm here too, baby," he whispered. "Daddy's here. I'm not going to leave again. I promise." Sophie's eyelids fluttered. Richard froze. "Did you see that?" His voice cracked. "Her eyes. She heard you." Grace smiled softly. "She's been waiting for you." Richard's face crumpled. He pressed his forehead against his daughter's hand and wept. Emma watched from her bed, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy." Richard looked up. "Will you stay with us? Please? Not just Sophie. All of us. Will you stay? Richard stood. He walked to Emma's bed and pulled her into his arms. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. I've been so scared of losing you that I forgot to be here. We're scared too, Daddy. Emma's voice broke. We don't want to die. We don't want to leave you. You're not going anywhere. Richard held her tighter. I won't let you. I don't care what the doctors say. I don't care what anyone says. You're going to fight, and I'm going to fight with you. Lily started crying. Daddy, come here too. Please. Richard reached out and pulled her into the embrace, 2 daughters in his arms, the third still holding Grace's hand. Grace stood quietly and stepped back, giving them space. Don't go. Emma's voice was muffled against Richard's shoulder but firm. You said you wouldn't leave. Grace stopped. I'm not leaving. I'm just giving you a moment with your father. We want you here too. Lily lifted her head. Please. Grace looked at Richard. He nodded slowly, his face wet with tears. She walked back and stood beside them, her hand still connected to Sophie's. For a long moment, nobody spoke. The room was filled with the sound of crying, of healing, of something broken beginning to mend. Then Sophie's eyes opened. Everyone froze. Sophie looked around slowly, her gaze unfocused at first. Then she saw her father, her sisters, and finally Grace. Her lips moved. Who? Her voice was barely a whisper. Cracked. Unused. Who are you? Grace knelt beside her bed. I'm Grace Sophie. I'm going to be staying with you for a while. Sophie stared at her for a long moment. Then she said something that shattered the room. Are you an angel? Did you come to take us to Mommy? Richard made a sound like he'd been stabbed. Grace shook her head slowly. No, sweetheart. I'm not an angel. And I didn't come to take you anywhere. I came to help you stay. Stay where? Here. With your daddy. With your sisters. With everyone who loves you. Sophie's eyes moved to Richard. Daddy's crying. Because he loves you so much. Is he sad? A little. But mostly he's happy. Because you opened your eyes. Sophie processed this. Then she looked back at Grace. My hand is warm. That's because I'm holding it. Don't let go. I won't. Promise? Grace squeezed gently. I promise. Sophie's eyes fluttered closed again, but this time her face was peaceful. Not the stillness of giving up, the stillness of rest. Richard stood frozen, unable to speak. Emma broke the silence. She talked. Sophie talked. She hasn't talked in 3 days, and she just talked. I heard her. Richard's voice was hollow with shock. I heard her. He looked at Grace, really looked at her for the first time. Not with suspicion. Not with dismissal. With something like wonder. Who are you? He asked. Where did you come from? Grace kept her eyes on Sophie. I'm just someone who made a promise a long time ago. What promise? That I would never give up on a child again, no matter what. Richard waited for more, but Grace didn't offer it. She just sat there holding his daughter's hand, humming that same soft lullaby. He wanted to ask what she meant by again. He wanted to know her story, her secrets, her pain, but not now, not tonight. Tonight was about his daughters. Margaret, he called out. The housekeeper appeared in the doorway. She'd been watching the whole time, tears streaming down her face. Prepare a room for Miss Mitchell, the one next to the medical wing. Yes, sir. And Margaret. Sir. Richard looked at Grace, at Sophie's hand wrapped around hers, at his other 2 daughters, watching with something they hadn't shown in months. Hope. Cancel everything I said before. Miss Mitchell is staying. Grace finally looked up at him. Are you sure, Mr. Hartwell? No. He shook his head. I'm not sure of anything anymore. But my daughter opened her eyes for the first time in 3 days. My daughter spoke for the first time in 3 days. And you've been here less than an hour. He paused. I don't understand what you're doing. I don't understand how you're doing it. But whatever it is, don't stop. Grace nodded slowly. I won't. Richard walked to the door, then stopped. He didn't turn around. Miss Mitchell? Yes. Thank you for staying. He walked out before she could respond. Grace turned back to the girls. Emma was still crying. Lily was holding her sister's hand. Sophie was sleeping peacefully, her fingers still wrapped around Grace's. Is he always like that? Grace asked softly. Emma wiped her eyes. Like what? Scared. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Ever since Mom died. He doesn't know how to love us without being afraid of losing us. That must be hard. It's lonely. Emma's voice cracked. He's right there, but he's never really there. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. Can you fix him? Grace looked toward the door where Richard had disappeared. I can't fix anyone, Emma, but maybe I can help him remember how to be your father. How? By showing him that love isn't about protecting people from pain. It's about being with them through it. Emma considered this. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since Grace walked in. Who did you lose? Grace's hand tightened on Sophie's. What do you mean? You said you promised you'd never give up on a child again. That means you gave up on one before. Who was it? The room went silent. Grace didn't answer for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. Her name was Mia. She was 6 years old. She had leukemia, just like you. Emma's eyes went wide. What happened to her? Grace closed her eyes. She died 5 years ago. I held her hand just like I'm holding Sophie's now. And I couldn't save her. No matter how hard I tried, no matter how much I prayed, no matter how much I loved her, I couldn't save her. Lily gasped. Was she your daughter? The word hit Grace like a bullet. Daughter. Such a simple word. Such an infinite meaning. Yes, she whispered. She was my daughter. The room went completely still. Emma spoke first. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked. It's okay. Grace opened her eyes. They were wet but steady. I want you to know. I want you to understand why I'm here. Why? Because I made Mia a promise the night she died. I promised her that I would never let another child feel alone the way she felt alone. I promised her that I would keep fighting even when everyone else gave up. I promised her that her death would mean something. Grace looked at Sophie, at Lily, at Emma. You three are my promise. I didn't know it until today, but the moment I walked into this house I knew. This is why I'm still alive. This is what I've been waiting for. Emma started crying again. Not from fear this time, from something else. What if you can't save us either? Grace reached out and took Emma's hand with her free one. Now she was connected to all three of them. Sophie on one side, Emma and Lily on the other. Then I'll be with you until the end. I'll hold your hands. I'll tell you stories. I'll sing you lullabies. And I'll make sure you never ever feel alone. Even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts. Emma squeezed her hand. You're not like the others. No, I'm not. Why not? Grace smiled through her tears. Because I have nothing left to lose, and that makes me very, very stubborn. For the first time in months, Emma laughed. It was small, weak, but real. Lily laughed too. And somewhere in her sleep, Sophie's lips curved into the faintest smile. Grace sat with them until they all fell asleep. Then she stayed longer, watching their breathing, listening to the monitors, praying to a God she'd stopped believing in 5 years ago. Around midnight, she heard footsteps in the hallway. Richard appeared in the doorway. He didn't come in. He just stood there watching. They're sleeping, Grace said quietly. I know. I heard them laughing earlier. Emma has a good sense of humor. She used to. Before. Richard paused. I haven't heard her laugh in 6 months. She's still in there. They all are. They've just been waiting. For what? For someone to tell them it's okay to still be alive. Richard was silent for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him since the conversation he'd overheard. Your daughter, Mia, tell me about her. Grace looked at him. Why? Because I need to understand. I need to know who you are and why you're doing this and how you're making my daughters respond when no one else could. It won't help your daughters if I tell you. Maybe it'll help me. Grace studied his face. The exhaustion, the fear, the desperate hope he was trying so hard to hide. Tomorrow, she said finally. I'll tell you tomorrow. Right now your daughters need to sleep. And so do you. I can't sleep. I haven't slept properly in months. Then sit with me. You don't have to sleep. Just be here. Richard hesitated. Then he walked into the room and lowered himself into the chair beside Lily's bed. He sat there in silence, watching his daughters breathe. After a long while, he spoke. I've spent $15 million trying to save them. I've called every specialist, tried every treatment, done everything money can do. Money can't buy everything, Mr. Hartwell. I know that now. His voice cracked. I've known it for a while. I just didn't want to admit it. What couldn't it buy? Richard looked at Sophie's hand still wrapped around Grace's. This, whatever this is, whatever you have that made my daughter open her eyes. You have it too. No, I don't. You do. You've just forgotten where you put it. Richard laughed bitterly. And where did I put it, Miss Mitchell? The same place every scared parent puts it. Behind walls, under armor, locked away where it can't hurt you. Grace looked at him. But it's still there. Your daughters can see it. That's why they keep waiting for you. Waiting for what? For you to let them in. Richard's face crumbled. He pressed his hands against his eyes, his shoulders shaking. I don't know how, he whispered. I don't know how to be close to them without being terrified. Every time I look at them, I see Sarah dying. I see them in the ground beside her. I see myself alone in this house with nothing but money and silence. So you stay away. It's easier. No, it's not. Grace's voice was gentle but firm. It's just different. You're still in pain. You've just put distance between yourself and the source. But the pain doesn't go away. It just spreads. Richard lowered his hands. His eyes were red and raw. How do I fix it? You show up, every day, even when it hurts, even when you're scared. You sit with them. You talk to them. You let them see that you're afraid too. Won't that make it worse? Showing them I'm afraid? No, it'll make them feel less alone. Right now they think they're the only ones who are scared. They think you have it all together. They think you're strong and they're weak. They said that. They didn't have to. I can see it in their eyes. Richard looked at his daughters, 3 small bodies in 3 small beds, fighting a battle they didn't choose, carrying a burden no child should carry. I've failed them, he said quietly. I've failed them completely. No. Grace shook her head. You've loved them. You've fought for them. You've spent every resource you have trying to save them. That's not failure, Mr. Hartwell. That's just being lost. Is there a way back? Grace smiled softly. There's always a way back. You just have to want it badly enough. I want it. His voice broke. God, I want it more than anything. Then start tomorrow. Wake up. Come to this room. Sit with your daughters. Talk to them. Let them talk to you. And whatever happens after that, at least you'll have been here. Richard nodded slowly. Tomorrow. Tomorrow. He stood looking down at Grace, still holding Sophie's hand. You really aren't going to leave, are you? No. Even if it ends badly. Especially if it ends badly. That's when people need someone most. Richard walked to the door. Then he stopped and turned back one final time. Grace. It was the first time he'd used her first name. Yes. Thank you. For staying. For making her open her eyes. For everything. Grace nodded. Get some sleep, Richard. Tomorrow is a new day. He left without another word. Grace sat alone in the darkness, surrounded by the sound of 3 children breathing. She thought about Mia, about the promise she'd made, about the years she'd spent wandering, searching for meaning, finding nothing, until today. I'm keeping my promise, baby girl, she whispered into the darkness. I found them, and I'm going to fight for them, just like I should have fought for you. Somewhere outside, the wind stirred the trees. Inside, Sophie's hand tightened around Grace's just slightly, just enough. Grace closed her eyes and began to hum that old lullaby again. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles, new pain. But tonight, 3 little girls were sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. And their father was finally starting to remember how to love them. It wasn't a miracle. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And sometimes, beginnings are enough. The next morning came faster than Richard expected. He'd fallen asleep in his office chair, still wearing yesterday's clothes. The first thing he heard when he opened his eyes was something impossible. Laughter. He sat up so fast he knocked over a stack of papers. His heart hammered against his ribs. That sound. He knew that sound. He hadn't heard it in 6 months. Richard ran. He didn't walk, didn't compose himself, didn't pretend to be calm. He ran through the hallway, down the corridor, toward the medical wing where his daughters were supposed to be dying. He stopped in the doorway. The blackout curtains were gone. Sunlight poured through the windows for the first time in months. And there in the middle of the room, Grace stood beside Emma's bed, holding a hairbrush like a microphone, singing something completely off-key. Emma was laughing. Actually laughing, her thin shoulders shaking, her pale face bright with joy. You're terrible, Emma gasped between giggles. That's not even the right words. I'm improvising, Grace said with mock offense. Artists improvise. You're not an artist. You're a disaster. A talented disaster. Lily was clapping from her bed, weak but enthusiastic. Do another one. Do the one about the fish. Grace launched into another song, even worse than the first. She danced badly, waved the hairbrush around, made faces that belonged in a cartoon. And Richard's daughters laughed, all of them. Even Sophie, still lying down, had her eyes open and the ghost of a smile on her lips. Richard couldn't move. His feet had frozen to the floor. His throat had closed completely. Grace noticed him and stopped mid-note. Good morning, Mr. Hartwell. He tried to respond. Nothing came out. Emma turned toward the door. Daddy, Miss Grace is the worst singer in the world. The worst. Lily agreed happily. Richard walked forward slowly, like approaching a dream he was afraid would disappear. What's happening? What did you do? We're having a concert, Grace said simply. The girls wanted music. Music. Richard looked at the open curtains, the sunlight, his daughters' faces. They haven't. They don't. They do now. Grace set down the hairbrush. Emma requested pop songs. Lily wanted something about animals. Sophie hasn't made a request yet, but I think she's a jazz fan. Sophie's smile widened slightly. Richard knelt beside Emma's bed. His hands were shaking. You're laughing. Miss Grace is funny, Daddy. Emma reached out and touched his face. You look weird. I feel weird. His voice cracked. I feel like I'm dreaming. You're not dreaming. Emma's small hand stayed on his cheek. We're still here. We're still real. Richard pulled her into a hug. He held her like she might vanish if he let go. I know, sweetheart. I know you're real. Daddy, you're squishing me. He released her quickly. Sorry, I'm sorry. It's okay. Emma smiled at him. I missed your hugs. The words hit Richard like a freight train. She missed his hugs, because he'd stopped giving them, because he'd been too afraid to get close. I missed hugging you too, he whispered. I'm sorry I stopped. Are you going to start again? Yes, every day, I promise. Emma looked at Grace. See, I told you he'd come back. Grace nodded. You were right. You know your daddy pretty well. I know he gets scared, but scared people can still love you. You told me that last night. Richard looked at Grace. She met his eyes steadily, no judgment, no expectation. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. We're just getting started. 3 days passed. Grace didn't follow any rules. She opened windows every morning, letting fresh air flow through the medical wing. She played music constantly, everything from classical to country to songs she made up on the spot. She brought flowers from the garden, arranging them in mason jars on each girl's bedside table. The nurses watched her with confusion. The staff whispered that she was crazy. Margaret kept shaking her head, unable to understand what was happening. But the girls responded. Emma started eating full meals. Lily asked for her favorite books. Sophie began speaking in complete sentences, her voice growing stronger each day. Richard watched from doorways, from windows, from corners of the room where he thought no one could see him. He wanted to join them. He wanted to be part of whatever magic Grace was creating. But something held him back. Fear, maybe, or habit. He'd spent so long protecting himself from pain that he didn't know how to stop. On the 4th morning, Grace caught him watching. You can come in, you know, she said without turning around. She was braiding Lily's hair, her fingers moving gently through the few strands that remained. They want you here. Richard stepped into the room slowly. I don't want to interrupt. You're not interrupting. You're their father. I know, but nothing. Grace finished the braid and tied it with a pink ribbon. Lily, doesn't your daddy give the best hugs? Lily nodded enthusiastically. The best, but he doesn't give them anymore. Richard flinched. Lily, Come give her a hug, Grace said. It wasn't a request. Richard walked to Lily's bed. He leaned down and wrapped his arms around her small frame. She felt so fragile, so breakable. He was terrified he might hurt her. Tighter, Daddy, Lily whispered. I won't break. He held her tighter. She melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, sweetheart, more than anything in the world. Then why do you stay away? The question was innocent, curious. It destroyed him. Because I'm scared, Richard admitted. I'm scared of losing you. And I thought if I stayed away it wouldn't hurt as much when... He couldn't finish the sentence. Lily pulled back and looked at him with eyes too wise for 7 years old. It would hurt more, Daddy. If you stayed away and then we died, you'd be sad forever because you missed all the time you could have had. Richard stared at his daughter. When did you get so smart? Miss Grace told me. She said the same thing happened to her. Richard looked at Grace. She was watching them with tears in her eyes. She's right, Grace said quietly. I stayed away from someone I loved because I was scared. And when she died, I realized I'd wasted all the time we could have had together. I'll never get that back. Richard stood up slowly. Your daughter? Yes. You stayed away from her. Not physically, but emotionally, yes. I was so focused on finding cures, on fighting the disease, on doing everything I could to save her, that I forgot to just be with her. Grace's voice broke. She died in my arms, and the last thing she said was, Mommy, I missed you. She was right there the whole time and she still missed me. The room went silent. Emma spoke first. That's really sad, Miss Grace. It is, but it taught me something important. What? That being there is more important than fixing things. Sometimes you can't fix things, but you can always be there. Richard sat down heavily in the nearest chair. His whole life he'd tried to fix things. Fix his business, fix his marriage, fix his daughter's illness. And when he couldn't fix something, he retreated. He hid. He built walls. "I've been doing it all wrong," he said quietly. "You've been doing what you knew how to do," Grace replied. "Now you can learn something different." "How?" "Start by being here. Right now, right in this moment. Don't think about tomorrow or next week or what might happen. Just be here with them today." Richard looked at his 3 daughters. Emma was watching him carefully. Lily was still smiling from the hug. Sophie had turned her head toward him, her eyes curious. "Can you teach me," Richard asked, "how to do that?" Grace smiled softly. "I can try, but honestly, they're the best teachers you'll ever have." On the 5th day, something extraordinary happened. Dr. Catherine Reynolds came for her weekly visit. She examined each girl in silence, her face unreadable. Richard stood in the corner, arms crossed, bracing himself for bad news. When the examination was finished, Dr. Reynolds just stood there staring at her tablet. "Well?" Richard's voice was tight. "What did you find?" Dr. Reynolds looked up. Her face was pale. "I don't understand this." "What don't you understand?" "Their vitals, their blood work, their white cell counts." She shook her head slowly. "Richard, they're improving." Richard's heart stopped. "What did you say?" "I had the lab run the tests 3 times. The results are the same every time. Their leukemia markers are decreasing. Their healthy cells are multiplying. They're getting better." Richard grabbed the edge of a table to steady himself. "That's impossible. You said they had 2 weeks. You said there was nothing more you could do." "I know what I said." Dr. Reynolds looked toward Grace, who was sitting quietly beside Sophie's bed. "But something is working. Something I can't explain." What's working?" "I don't know. There's no medical explanation for this. The chemotherapy wasn't effective. The cancer was too aggressive. But now—" She trailed off, shaking her head again. "I've been practicing medicine for 30 years, Richard. I've never seen anything like this." Richard turned to Grace. "What are you doing to them?" Grace looked surprised. "I'm not doing anything medical." "Then what? How is this happening?" "I don't know." Grace's voice was honest. I'm just here. I'm just being here with them." Dr. Reynolds stepped closer to Richard, lowering her voice. "I don't care how it's happening. I don't care if it makes sense. Whatever's going on in this room, don't change anything. Don't question it. Just let it continue." She left quickly, promising to return in a few days to run more tests. Richard stood frozen in the middle of the room, trying to process what he'd just heard. His daughters were improving. After months of decline, after giving up all hope, they were actually getting better. "Daddy?" Emma's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you okay?" "I don't know." He looked at her. "I don't know what I am. You look happy and sad at the same time." "I feel happy and sad at the same time." Emma held out her hand. "Come sit with me. Miss Grace says when you feel too many things at once, you should just sit down and breathe." Richard walked to her bed and took her hand. He sat on the edge of the mattress, looking at his firstborn daughter. "You're getting better," he said. "The doctor said you're getting better." "I know. I can feel it." "You can?" "Yeah. I feel less tired, less heavy, like the darkness is going away." Emma squeezed his hand. Miss Grace chased it away. Richard looked at Grace. She was watching them with tears streaming down her face. "I didn't chase anything away," Grace said. "You did that yourselves. You decided to fight." "You gave us a reason to fight," Emma replied. "You told us we were worth saving. Nobody had said that in a long time." Richard's chest tightened. Worth saving. Had he ever said that to them? Had he ever told them they were worth the fight? You're worth saving, he said, suddenly, the words bursting out. All three of you. You're worth everything. You're worth more than my money, my company, my life. You're worth everything I have. Emma's eyes filled with tears. You never said that before. I should have. I should have said it every day. Can you say it again? You're worth saving. You're worth saving. You're worth saving. Richard pulled her close, pressing his face against her bald head. I'll say it 1,000,000 times if you need me to. Lily started crying from her bed. Me too, Daddy. Say it to me too. Richard reached out and grabbed her hand. You're worth saving, Lily. Every single part of you. Sophie too, Lily insisted. Tell Sophie. Richard looked at his youngest daughter. She was watching him with those fierce eyes, the ones that reminded him so much of himself. Sophie. His voice broke on her name. You're worth saving. You're worth every fight. You're the strongest person I know. Sophie's lips trembled. I don't feel strong. You are. You've been fighting this disease for 6 months. You've been fighting when everyone else gave up. That's stronger than anyone I've ever known. Sophie looked at Grace. Is he telling the truth? Grace smiled through her tears. He is. You're all incredibly strong. Stronger than you know. Sophie turned back to her father. I want to fight more. I want to win. Then fight. I'll fight with you. We'll fight together. Promise? I promise. Sophie held out her pinky. It was such a childish gesture, such a normal thing for a 7-year-old to do. Richard hooked his pinky around hers. Pinky promise? Sophie said. Those can't be broken. Never. Richard agreed. Pinky promises are forever. On the 7th day, Grace asked for party supplies. Richard found her in the kitchen making a list. Balloons, streamers, cake ingredients. What is this? He picked up the paper. Plans for their birthday party. Richard stared at her. Their birthday is in 3 days. I know. That's why I need to start planning now. Grace. He set down the list carefully. They're getting better, but we don't know if it will last. We don't know if they'll make it to their birthday. Then we make sure they do. That's not how medicine works. Maybe not. But that's how hope works. Richard felt his old fears rising, the walls he'd built so carefully starting to reconstruct themselves. You're setting them up for disappointment. No, Mr. Hartwell, I'm giving them something to look forward to. There's a difference. What if they don't make it? What if we plan this whole party and they... He couldn't finish. What if they do? What if they make it to their birthday and there's nothing waiting for them? No cake, no presents, no celebration? What message does that send? Richard was silent. Grace stepped closer. I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt before. But your daughters need to see that you believe they have a future. Even if you're not sure. Even if you're terrified. They need to see hope in your eyes. I don't know if I can fake that. Then don't fake it. Feel it. Decide to believe even for 3 days. Give them that gift. Richard looked at the list again. Balloons, streamers, rainbow cake. A rainbow cake. 6 layers, 1 for each color. Emma's idea. Richard felt something crack inside him. Emma's idea. His daughter was planning her own birthday cake. She believed she'd be alive to eat it. Okay, he heard himself say. Okay, let's do it. Grace smiled. Really? Really? But I want to help. I want to be part of it. Then welcome to the party planning committee. She handed him the list. He looked at it, then looked at her. Grace. Yes. Thank you for not giving up. On them or on me. I don't give up easily, Richard. I learned that the hard way. He wanted to ask more about Mia, about what happened. about why she was really here, but he held back. There would be time for that later. At least he hoped there would be time. On the 8th day, Grace did something that terrified everyone. She put the girls in wheelchairs and took them outside. Margaret nearly had a heart attack when she saw them rolling across the lawn. The nurses protested loudly. Even Richard, who had agreed to trust Grace, felt his blood pressure spike. But he didn't stop her. He watched from his office window as Grace wheeled all 3 girls into the garden. The sun was warm. The flowers were blooming. And his daughters, pale and bald, and still attached to portable monitors, were sitting outside for the first time in 6 months. Emma tilted her face toward the sky. "It's so bright." "That's the sun," Grace said. "Remember the sun? I forgot how warm it was." Lily reached out and touched a flower. "It's real. I thought I'd never touch a real flower again." Sophie just sat there breathing deeply, her eyes closed. When she opened them, there were tears streaming down her face. "What's wrong?" Grace knelt beside her. "Are you in pain?" "No." Sophie shook her head. I thought I'd never be outside again. I thought I'd die in that room." Grace pulled her into a hug. "You're not going to die in that room. You're going to live out here under this sun surrounded by these flowers. You're going to grow up and have adventures and do all the things you've been dreaming about. You really believe that?" "I know it." Sophie hugged her back fiercely. "I love you, Miss Grace." The words hit Grace like a physical blow. She froze, unable to breathe. Mia had said those words the night she died. "I love you, Mommy." And then she was gone. "I love you too, Sophie," Grace whispered. "I love all of you so much." Up in his office, Richard watched the scene unfold. He saw Grace hugging his daughter. He saw the other 2 girls reaching out to join the embrace. He saw 4 people holding on to each other like the world depended on it. And he realized he should be down there with them. He was out of his chair before he knew it. Running through the house. Bursting through the back door. Crossing the lawn. The girls saw him coming. Emma's face lit up. "Daddy?" Richard dropped to his knees beside them, pulling all 3 girls into his arms. Grace stepped back to give him room, but Emma grabbed her hand. "You too, Miss Grace. You're part of this too." Grace hesitated. Richard looked at her. "She's right," he said. "You're part of this family now, whether you like it or not." Grace let herself be pulled into the embrace. 5 people huddled together in a garden, crying and laughing at the same time. "This is the best day ever," Lily said. "The best." Sophie agreed. Emma looked at her father. "Daddy, are you going to stay? Not just today, every day." Richard tightened his grip on them. "Every day, sweetheart. I promise. Every single day." They stayed in the garden for hours. Richard sat with his daughters, really sat with them for the first time in months. He told them stories about their mother. He answered their questions about heaven. He laughed at Emma's jokes and cried at Lily's memories and held Sophie's hand when she got tired. When it was finally time to go back inside, something had changed. The house felt different. Less like a tomb waiting for death, more like a home waiting for life. That night, Richard found Grace standing alone on the back porch staring at the stars. "You okay?" he asked, stepping beside her. "I don't know." Her voice was thick. "When Sophie said she loved me, it hit you hard." "My daughter said the same thing, the night she died. Those exact words." Richard was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It's not a bad memory, just a painful one." Grace wiped her eyes. "But today, when Sophie said it, I felt something different. Not just pain, something else." "What?" "Hope. Like maybe Mia sent me here. Like maybe this was always supposed to happen." Richard turned to look at her. "Do you believe in things like that fate destiny?" "I didn't used to, but now..." Grace shook her head. "I don't know what I believe anymore. I just know I'm supposed to be here. With them. With you. Richard reached out and took her hand. I'm glad you're here. Grace squeezed back. So am I. They stood together in silence, watching the stars, two broken people, beginning to heal. Neither of them knew what tomorrow would bring. But for the first time in a long time, they were ready to face it together. The morning of day 9 started with chaos. Grace woke to the sound of screaming. She bolted from her chair beside Sophie's bed and found Emma sitting up, her face twisted in terror. Emma, what's wrong? I can't see. Emma's hands clawed at her face. Everything's dark, Miss Grace, I can't see. Grace grabbed her hands, forcing them down. Look at me, Emma. Open your eyes and look at me. They are open. I can't see anything. Lily started crying. Sophie sat up in her bed, her face pale. Richard burst through the door, still in his pajamas, his hair wild. What happened? What's going on? She says she can't see. Grace said, her voice steady, even as her heart raced. Emma, sweetheart, I need you to calm down. Take a deep breath. I don't want to be blind. I don't want to die blind. Richard rushed to her side. Emma, baby, it's okay. I'm here. Daddy's here. Daddy! Emma reached out blindly. Richard caught her hands. Daddy, I can't see your face. I wanted to see your face one more time before I died. You're not dying. Richard's voice cracked. You're not dying, do you hear me? Grace looked at Emma's eyes closely. They were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Then she noticed something. Emma, when did you last take your medication? What? Your medication, the eye drops Dr. Reynolds prescribed. When did you last use them? Emma stopped crying. I forgot. I forgot last night. And this morning? Grace let out a breath. Richard, get the eye drops. Now. Richard ran to the medication cabinet and grabbed the small bottle. Grace tilted Emma's head back and administered the drops carefully. Close your eyes. Keep them closed for 30 seconds. But I can't see. Trust me, just close them. Emma squeezed her eyes shut. The room went silent, except for Lily's quiet sobbing and the beeping of monitors. 30 seconds passed. Okay, Grace said. Open them slowly. Emma opened her eyes. She blinked once, twice. Then her face crumpled with relief. I can see. Oh my God, I can see. Richard collapsed against the bed rail. Don't ever scare me like that again. I'm sorry, Daddy. I thought I was dying. You're not dying. Richard pulled her into a hug. You're not dying. You just forgot your drops. Emma laughed weakly. That's so stupid. I thought I was going blind, and it was just the drops. Grace sat down heavily, her own hands shaking. It's not stupid. It's scary. But you're okay now. Miss Grace, you saved me. I just remembered your medication schedule, that's all. You remembered when no one else did. Emma reached out and took Grace's hand. That's not nothing. That's everything. The scare with Emma's vision set everyone on edge. Richard called Dr. Reynolds, immediately demanding she come check on the girls. She arrived within the hour, running every test she could think of. It was just the medication, she confirmed. The eye drops prevent inflammation. Without them, temporary vision loss can occur. It's a side effect of the chemotherapy, not a sign of decline. Richard let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for hours. So she's okay? They're all still improving. Better than okay. Dr. Reynolds smiled. Their numbers continue to improve. At this rate, we might be able to start talking about remission within a few months. Remission. Richard repeated the word like it was holy. You said that was impossible. I said a lot of things that seem to be wrong. Dr. Reynolds looked at Grace. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. After the doctor left, Richard found Grace in the hallway, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed. You okay? No. Grace opened her eyes. When Emma screamed, I thought we were losing her. I thought it was happening again. Again? Mia went blind before she died. The disease spread to her optic nerves. The last thing she ever saw was my face. And then... Grace pressed her hand against her mouth. When Emma said she couldn't see I was back there, in that room, watching my daughter die. Richard moved closer. But Emma's okay. I know. But for a moment I wasn't here. I was 5 years in the past and I couldn't breathe. Richard reached out and pulled her into a hug. It was awkward at first. He wasn't used to comforting anyone except his daughters. But Grace melted into him, her whole body shaking. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm supposed to be the strong one. You are strong, but even strong people need someone to lean on. Grace pulled back and looked at him. Her eyes were red, but something had shifted in them. Thank you, Richard. For what? For being here. For letting me be human. You let me be human first. It's only fair. She laughed softly. It was a broken sound, but real. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two broken people trying to hold each other together. Maybe that's the only way it works. Maybe we need to be broken to understand how to help each other heal. Grace touched his face gently. You've changed. You changed me. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. Then Sophie's voice cut through. Daddy, Miss Grace, can you come here, please? They stepped apart quickly, the moment broken but not forgotten. Day 10, the birthday. Grace had been up since dawn decorating the dining room with Margaret's help. Balloons covered the ceiling. Streamers hung from every surface. The rainbow cake sat in the center of the table, 6 layers tall, each one a different color. Richard walked in and stopped dead. This is incredible. Grace wiped frosting from her hands. The girls haven't seen it yet. I wanted it to be a surprise. They're going to lose their minds. That's the plan. Richard looked at her, really looked at her. She had flour in her hair, frosting on her cheek, dark circles under her eyes from staying up all night. You're exhausted. I'll sleep later. Today is about them. Grace, you need to take care of yourself too. I will, after the party. Richard shook his head but didn't argue. He knew that look in her eyes. He'd seen it in the mirror for years, the look of someone who would burn themselves to ashes to save the people they loved. Let me help, he said. Tell me what to do. Get the girls ready. Don't let them peek. And Richard, yes, thank you, for believing this was worth doing. I didn't believe it at first. You made me believe. Grace smiled. It was the most beautiful thing Richard had ever seen. An hour later, the girls were ready. Emma wore her blue dress, the one her mother had bought her. Lily wore yellow bright as sunshine. Sophie wore pink, her favorite color. They sat in their wheelchairs in the hallway, blindfolded, giggling with anticipation. Can we look yet? Emma demanded. Not yet, Grace said. This is torture. Patience is a virtue. I'm 7 years old. I don't have virtues yet. Richard laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised even him. Grace pushed open the dining room doors. Okay, now you can look. The girls pulled off their blindfolds. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then Emma burst into tears. It's so beautiful, she sobbed. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Lily just stared, her mouth hanging open. Is that a rainbow cake? Is that actually a rainbow cake? 6 layers, Grace confirmed. 1 for each color. Sophie didn't say anything. She just reached out and grabbed Grace's hand, squeezing so hard it hurt. Thank you, Sophie whispered. Thank you for believing we'd make it. Grace knelt beside her wheelchair. I always believed, even when no one else did. Even when we didn't believe ourselves. Especially then. Richard wheeled them into the dining room. Margaret had prepared all their favorite foods. The nurses had been given the day off. It was just family today. They ate, they laughed, They told stories about the girl's mother memories that Richard had locked away for 3 years. "She used to sing to you," Richard said, his voice thick. "Every night. The same lullaby. She said it was the only thing that made you sleep." "What song?" Lily asked. Richard started to answer, then stopped. "I can't remember the words. I've tried and tried, but I can't remember." Grace looked at him. "Can you remember the melody?" "I think so." "Hum it. Just hum it and see if it feels right." Richard hesitated. Then he began to hum. Slowly at first. A simple melody, soft and sweet. Emma's eyes went wide. "I know that song." "You do?" "I hear it in my dreams sometimes. I never knew where it came from." Lily started crying again. "Mommy used to sing that. I remember now. I remember her voice." Sophie closed her eyes and swayed gently to the melody. "She's here," she whispered. "Right now. I can feel her." Richard's voice broke. He couldn't continue humming. But Grace picked it up. She knew the melody. She'd been humming it to the girls for days, without knowing where it came from. The four of them sat there bound together by a song that had somehow passed from a dead mother to a stranger, connecting them all in ways they couldn't explain. When the humming faded, Emma spoke. "Miss Grace, how did you know Mommy's song?" Grace shook her head. "I don't know, sweetheart. I just knew it." "Maybe Mommy sent you," Lily said. "Maybe she sent you to take care of us because she couldn't." Grace felt tears streaming down her face. "Maybe she did." Richard reached across the table and took her hand. "Maybe she did." The birthday party lasted all afternoon. They ate cake until their stomachs hurt. They opened presents that Grace had secretly ordered online. They played games that made them laugh until they couldn't breathe. By evening, the girls were exhausted. Richard carried them to their beds one by one, something he hadn't done since they were toddlers. "Daddy," Emma said as he tucked her in, "this was the best day of my life." "Mine too, sweetheart. I didn't think I'd make it to 7, but I did." "You did. And I'm going to make it to 8, and 9, and 10. I'm going to grow up and get married and have babies, and you're going to be a grandpa." Richard's eyes burned. "I'd like that." "Miss Grace should stay forever. Can she stay forever?" Richard looked toward the door where Grace was tucking in Lily. "I hope so." "Ask her. Ask her to stay." "I will, I promise." Emma yawned. "Good. Because she makes everything better." "She makes you better too, Daddy." "What do you mean?" "You smile now. You didn't used to smile. You were always so sad and scared. But now you smile. That's because of her." Richard kissed his daughter's forehead. "You're too smart for 7 years old." "I know. It's one of my best qualities." He laughed and moved to Sophie's bed. His youngest was already half asleep. "You okay, baby?" "Mm-hmm." Sophie reached out and grabbed his hand. "Daddy, I'm glad I didn't die." The words hit him like a punch. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." "I was ready to die, before Miss Grace came. I was ready to go see Mommy." "What changed?" Sophie opened her eyes and looked at him. "Miss Grace told me I was worth saving. Nobody ever said that before." "Not like she said it. So I decided to try. For her. And for you." Richard couldn't speak. He just held his daughter's hand until she fell asleep. When all three girls were resting, he found Grace in the hallway, cleaning up the last of the party decorations. "You should leave that for the morning," he said. "I don't mind. It gives me something to do." Richard took the streamers from her hands. "Grace, stop. Just for a minute." She stopped. "Sophie told me something. She said you told her she was worth saving. She said that's why she decided to fight." Grace nodded slowly. "I remember." "How did you know?" "How did you know that's what she needed to hear?" Grace was quiet for a long moment. "Because that's what I needed to hear." when Mia was dying, when everyone had given up. I needed someone to tell me that the fight was worth it, that she was worth it, that I was worth it. Her voice broke. Nobody did. And I've regretted it every day since. Richard stepped closer. You were worth it, Grace. Your daughter was worth it. And what you did here, what you're doing for my girls, it matters. It matters more than you know. I couldn't save Mia. No, but you're saving them. And in some way maybe that saves her too. Maybe it gives her death meaning. Grace looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. Do you really believe that? I believe that nothing happens by accident. You walked into my house when my daughters had 2 weeks to live. Now they're talking about remission. I don't know how to explain that except to say that maybe somehow you were supposed to be here. Grace laughed through her tears. That's a lot of faith for a man who doesn't believe in anything. I believe in you. Richard took her face in his hands. I believe in you, Grace Mitchell, and I want you to stay. Not just for my daughters, for me. Grace's breath caught. Richard, I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other, but I feel like I've known you forever, like you've always been here, like you were always supposed to be here. I feel it too, Grace whispered. From the moment I walked in, I felt it. Richard leaned closer. Then stay, please. Stay forever. I can't promise forever. Then promise today, and tomorrow, and the day after that, and we'll figure out forever as we go. Grace smiled. It was broken and beautiful and real. Okay, I'll stay. Today and tomorrow and the day after that. Richard kissed her forehead gently. That's all I need. They stood there in the hallway, holding each other, two broken people, finding something whole together. But neither of them knew that in less than 48 hours, everything would nearly fall apart. Day 12. The storm came without warning. Richard woke to the sound of wind howling against the windows. He checked his phone. No signal. He tried the landline. Dead. He ran to the medical wing. Grace was already there checking on the girls. How bad is it? He asked. Power flickered twice. The generator's holding for now. Grace looked at Sophie, who was sleeping restlessly. She feels warm. Richard touched his daughter's forehead. His heart dropped. She's burning up. Grace grabbed the thermometer. The number made her go pale. 104. Richard, we need to get her temperature down. They worked together, applying cold compresses, adjusting her medication. But Sophie's fever kept climbing. It's not working, Richard said, his voice rising in panic. Why isn't it working? Her immune system is weakened. Even a small infection can spike a fever like this. Then we need a doctor. We need to get her to the hospital. In this storm. Grace looked toward the window. The wind was screaming now. We wouldn't make it a mile. Emma and Lily were awake now, watching with terrified eyes. What's wrong with Sophie? Emma asked. She has a fever, sweetheart. We're trying to bring it down. Is she going to die? Grace grabbed Emma's hand. No, not if I have anything to say about it. Sophie's breathing became shallow. Her lips started turning blue. Richard, she's not getting enough oxygen. We need to... Then Sophie stopped breathing. The monitor flatlined. No! Richard lunged toward his daughter. Sophie. Sophie, wake up. Grace pushed him aside. She tilted Sophie's head back, opened her airway, started compressions. Come on, baby. Come on. Don't do this. She counted, pressed, breathed, counted again. Grace. She's not responding. Grace. I know. Grace's voice cracked. I know. Just let me work. Emma and Lily were screaming, crying, begging their sister to wake up. 30 seconds. Nothing. 1 minute. Nothing. Richard fell to his knees. Please, God, please, Take me instead. Take anything, just not her." Grace kept going. Her arms burned. Her lungs ached. But she didn't stop. "You're not dying on me," she gasped between compressions. "You hear me, Sophie? You're not dying. Not like Mia. Not this time. I won't let it happen again." 2 minutes. "Sophie, please," Grace sobbed. "Please come back. Your daddy needs you. Your sisters need you. I need you." 2.5 minutes. Then Sophie coughed. It was small, weak, but it was there. Her eyes fluttered open. "Miss Grace." Grace collapsed forward, her face pressed against Sophie's chest, her whole body shaking with sobs. "You came back," she whispered. "You came back." Richard scrambled to his feet, grabbing Sophie's hand. "Baby, can you hear me?" "Daddy." Sophie's voice was barely audible. "I saw Mommy." Richard's blood went cold. "What?" "She was there. In a garden. She said it wasn't my time yet. She said Miss Grace needed me." Grace lifted her head. "What did you say?" "Mommy said you lost someone. Someone like me. She said I needed to stay for you, so you could heal." Grace stared at Sophie, tears streaming down her face. She said thank you for taking care of us. She said she couldn't do it herself, so she sent you instead." The room went silent, except for the howling wind and the beeping monitors. Richard looked at Grace. Grace looked at Sophie. Sophie closed her eyes and smiled. "She's pretty, Daddy. Mommy's really pretty." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I know, baby. I know she is." Sophie drifted back to sleep, her breathing steady this time, her fever finally breaking. Grace sat back on her heels, completely drained. Richard pulled her into his arms and held her while they both wept. "You saved her," he whispered. "I almost lost her." "But you didn't. You brought her back." "She brought herself back. She chose to stay." Richard pressed his face into Grace's hair. "She chose to stay for you. Did you hear what she said Sarah sent you?" "Richard, she was hallucinating. The fever. I don't care." Richard pulled back and looked at her. "I don't care if it was real or not. I believe it. My wife sent you to save our daughters. And you did. You saved all of us." Grace shook her head. "I'm not a savior. I'm just a woman who lost everything and needed something to fight for." "Maybe that's what makes you perfect. Maybe that's exactly what we needed." Dawn broke 3 hours later. The storm passed. The power came back on. Dr. Reynolds arrived as soon as the roads cleared. She examined Sophie carefully, running every test available. She had a severe infection, the doctor confirmed. Probably caught from being outside in the garden. Her immune system couldn't handle it. "Is she okay now?" Richard asked. "She's stable. The fever broke on its own, which is actually a good sign. It means her body is fighting back." Dr. Reynolds looked at Grace. "You performed CPR for over 2 minutes. In a storm, without equipment. Most people couldn't have done that." Grace said nothing. She was still holding Sophie's hand. "You saved her life," the doctor continued. "I need you to understand that. Without what you did, she wouldn't have made it. I just did what I had to do." "No, you did what no one else could." Dr. Reynolds touched Grace's shoulder. "Whoever you lost before, they would be proud of you." Grace finally broke. The tears she'd been holding back all morning poured out. Dr. Reynolds held her while she cried, not asking questions, not offering solutions, just being there. Richard watched from across the room, his heart breaking and healing at the same time. When Grace finally stopped crying, she looked at Sophie's sleeping face. "I couldn't save Mia," she whispered. "But I saved you. Maybe that means something." Sophie stirred. Her eyes opened halfway. "It means everything, Miss Grace. Mommy told me so." Grace laughed through her tears and kissed Sophie's forehead. "Then I'll take it. I'll take everything I can get." 3 days after the storm, Sophie took her first steps. Grace was helping her sit up in bed when Sophie suddenly pushed her hands away. "I want to try something." "Try what, sweetheart?" Sophie swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Her feet touched the cold floor. She gripped the bed rail with both hands. "Sophie, wait. You're not strong enough yet." "Yes, I am." Sophie's voice was fierce. The old Sophie. The fighter. "I died and came back. If I can do that, I can walk." Grace looked at Richard, who had frozen in the doorway. He shook his head slightly. "Baby, maybe you should wait until Dr. Reynolds—" Sophie stood up. Her legs wobbled. Her grip on the rail turned her knuckles white. But she was standing, on her own 2 feet, for the first time in 7 months. Emma gasped. "Sophie's standing? Oh my God!" Lily breathed. "She's actually standing!" Sophie's face twisted with concentration. Sweat broke out on her forehead. Every muscle in her small body trembled with effort. "One step," she said through gritted teeth. "Just one step." Grace moved to catch her if she fell. Richard did the same on her other side. Sophie lifted her right foot, moved it forward, set it down. One step. "I did it." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I took a step." "You did, baby." Richard's eyes were streaming. "You took a step. I want to take another one." "Sophie, maybe you should rest." "No." Sophie lifted her left foot, moved it forward, set it down. 2 steps. I took 2 steps. Emma started crying. "Keep going, Sophie. You can do it." Sophie looked at Grace. "Will you walk with me?" Grace nodded, unable to speak. She took Sophie's hand and walked beside her, as Sophie took another step, then another, then another. 5 steps, 10 steps, 15. Sophie reached the window and stopped. She was panting, exhausted, but her eyes were blazing with triumph. "I walked," she said. "I walked to the window." Grace pulled her into a hug. "You did more than walk, sweetheart. You flew." Richard scooped up his daughter and held her like she was made of gold. "I'm so proud of you. I'm so incredibly proud of you." "I'm proud of me too, Daddy." Sophie grinned. "I'm going to walk every day now. And then I'm going to run. And then I'm going to dance. Miss Grace, will you teach me to dance?" Grace laughed through her tears. "I'll teach you everything I know. Even the bad singing. Especially the bad singing." The whole room erupted in laughter. Even Margaret, who had come running when she heard the commotion, was wiping tears from her eyes. "This family," Margaret said, shaking her head. "I swear this family could raise the dead." Richard looked at Grace. "One of us could." Day 17. The hospital called. Richard took the call in his office, his heart pounding. Dr. Reynolds had sent Sophie's latest blood work to a specialist at Johns Hopkins. He'd been waiting 3 days for results. "Mr. Hartwell, I have news." "Good or bad?" The pause lasted forever. "Good." Dr. Reynolds' voice was thick. "Very good. Sophie's leukemia markers have dropped to nearly undetectable levels. The same is true for Emma and Lily. I've consulted with 5 other oncologists. They all agree." Richard's legs gave out. He sat down hard in his chair. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your daughters are in remission, Mr. Hartwell. Full remission." The phone slipped from Richard's hand. He could hear Dr. Reynolds still talking, but the words didn't register. Remission. Full remission. His daughters were going to live. He stumbled out of his office down the hallway toward the medical wing. Grace was reading to the girls when he burst through the door. "Richard, what's wrong?" He couldn't speak. He just stood there, tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. Emma sat up in alarm. "Daddy, you're scaring us." Richard crossed the room in 3 strides. He gathered all 3 of his daughters in his arms and held them so tight they squeaked. "Daddy, what's happening?" "You're okay." His voice was a broken whisper. "You're all okay. The doctor called. You're in remission. You're going to live." The room went completely silent. Then Emma started screaming, not in fear, in joy. Pure, uncontainable joy. We're not dying. We're really not dying. You're not dying. Richard kissed her forehead. You're going to grow up, all of you. You're going to grow up. Lily burst into tears. Sophie grabbed Grace's hand and pulled her into the family embrace. You saved us, Sophie said fiercely. Miss Grace, you saved us. Grace shook her head. You saved yourselves. No. Richard reached out and touched her face. She's right. You saved all of us. I don't know how. I don't know why. But you did. I just believed, Grace whispered. That's all I did. I just believed. That's everything. Richard pulled her closer. That's everything, Grace. Margaret appeared in the doorway. One look at their faces told her what she needed to know. I'll call the staff, she said, her own eyes welling up. Everyone needs to know. Within an hour, the entire household had gathered. Cooks, gardeners, drivers, housekeepers. People who had watched these girls fade away for months. People who had whispered about funeral arrangements when they thought no one could hear. Now they stood together, crying tears of joy, hugging strangers, celebrating a miracle none of them had dared to believe in. Richard stood at the center of it all, his daughters surrounding him, Grace by his side. He looked at the faces of his staff people he'd barely acknowledged for years, and felt something shift inside him. I owe all of you an apology, he said. The room went quiet. I've been a terrible employer. I've been cold and distant and focused on nothing but money and success. When my daughters got sick, I retreated even further. I pushed everyone away because I was afraid. He paused, gathering himself. But this woman, he gestured to Grace. This woman walked into my house and refused to let me stay afraid. She refused to let me give up. She refused to let my daughters die without a fight. Grace's eyes filled with tears. I don't know why she came here. I don't know how she knew what we needed. But I do know that she saved my family. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift. The room erupted in applause. Grace hid her face against Richard's shoulder, overwhelmed. Emma tugged on his sleeve. Daddy, are you going to marry Miss Grace? The applause died. Everyone stared. Richard looked at Grace. She looked back at him, her cheeks flushed, her eyes uncertain. That depends, he said slowly. What do you think, Miss Grace? I think you're asking me in front of 50 people. I know, I wanted witnesses. Grace laughed, then started crying, then laughed again. You're crazy. Probably. Is that a yes? It's a maybe. I'll take maybe. Richard grinned. Maybe is a good start. The applause resumed even louder than before. Sophie started chanting, kiss, kiss, kiss. And her sisters joined in until the whole room was demanding it. Richard looked at Grace. What do you say? Should we give them what they want? I think we better, before they riot. Richard kissed her. Not a long kiss. Not a passionate kiss. Just a gentle promise of things to come. The room exploded with cheers. Day 22. Grace finally told Richard everything. They sat together on the back porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. The girls were asleep. The house was quiet. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Her name was Mia Grace Mitchell, Grace began. I named her after my grandmother. She had my eyes and her father's smile. From the moment she was born, she was the center of my universe. Richard held her hand, but didn't speak. We were happy. For 6 years we were so happy. Then she got sick. A cold that wouldn't go away. Fatigue that seemed too heavy for a little girl. I took her to the doctor thinking she needed vitamins. Grace's voice cracked. They told me she had leukemia, acute lymphoblastic leukemia, the same thing your daughters had. Grace, you don't have to. I do. I need you to understand. Richard nodded. He waited. Her father left. 3 months after the diagnosis. He said he couldn't handle watching her die, He said it was too hard. Grace laughed bitterly. Too hard for him. He wasn't the one holding her while she screamed from the chemo. He wasn't the one cleaning up her vomit every night. He wasn't the one watching her hair fall out in clumps. I'm sorry. Don't be. He was weak. I didn't have room for weakness. Grace pulled her hand away and wrapped her arms around herself. I fought for her. I fought so hard. I sold everything we owned to pay for treatments. I took her to specialists in 5 different states. I tried experimental drugs, alternative therapies, anything that offered even the smallest hope. Like me, Richard said quietly. You did exactly what I did. Yes. And like you, I failed. Grace's voice broke. The cancer spread. It went to her bones, her organs, her brain. By the end, she couldn't see. She couldn't walk. She couldn't feed herself. My beautiful, vibrant little girl was trapped in a body that was shutting down piece by piece. Tears streamed down Grace's face. The night she died, I was so exhausted I could barely keep my eyes open. I hadn't slept in 3 days. I was sitting by her bed holding her hand when she suddenly spoke. What did she say? She said, "Mommy, I missed you." Grace's whole body shook with a sob. She was right there. I was right there. But she missed me, because I'd been so busy fighting for her life that I forgot to live it with her. Richard pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, crying harder than she'd ever cried before. I promised her, Grace sobbed. Right before she died, I promised her that I would never let another child feel alone like that. I would never forget that being there matters more than winning. I would never stop fighting for the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. You kept your promise. I tried. For 5 years I worked in hospice care. I sat with dying children. I held their hands. I sang them songs. I told them they were loved. But it was never enough. I couldn't save any of them. Grace pulled back and looked at him. Then I saw your job posting. A wealthy family in Connecticut needed help with their sick daughters. Something told me I had to come. Something pulled me here. I believe you, Richard said. You do. I believe there are things in this world we can't explain. I believe my wife sent you to us. I believe you were meant to save my daughters. He touched her face gently. And I believe you were meant to save me. Grace shook her head. I'm not a savior, Richard. I'm just a broken woman who needed something to fight for. Maybe that's what makes you perfect. Richard kissed her forehead. You understand loss. You understand grief. You understand what it means to love someone so much it destroys you when they're gone. That's why you could reach my daughters when no one else could. I was so scared, Grace whispered. When Sophie stopped breathing, I thought I was going to lose another child. I thought God was punishing me for thinking I could make a difference. But you didn't lose her. No, she came back. Because of you. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that made Richard's heart stop. She told me she saw Sarah. Sophie. She said Sarah thanked me. I know. Do you think it was real? Do you think she actually saw your wife? Richard looked up at the stars. I think Sophie saw something. Whether it was Sarah or her own brain trying to make sense of dying, I don't know. But I do know this. He turned back to Grace. My wife loved our daughters more than anything. If there was any way for her to help them, she would have found it. And if that meant sending you to us, then yes. I believe Sarah sent you. Grace started crying again. Richard held her until the tears stopped. I want to show you something, he said finally. Come with me. He led her through the house, up the grand staircase, down a hallway she'd never explored. They stopped in front of a locked door. This was Sarah's room, Richard said. I haven't opened it since she died. Richard, you don't have to. I want to. He pulled a key from his pocket. I want to move forward, and I can't do that if I'm still holding on to the past. He unlocked the door and pushed it open. Grace stepped inside slowly. The room smelled like dust and old perfume and memories. A woman's vanity sat against one wall, still covered with makeup and jewelry. A closet door stood open, revealing dresses that would never be worn again. And on the bedside table, a photograph. Grace walked toward it and picked it up. Sarah Hartwell smiled back at her. Beautiful, radiant, holding 3 newborn babies in her arms. "She looks happy," Grace said. She was. That was taken right after the girls were born. Right before. Richard couldn't finish. Grace set down the photograph and turned to face him. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because I want you to know her. Not just as a ghost or a memory. As a real person. Someone who loved her daughters as much as you love the children you care for. Someone who would have done anything to see them grow up. Richard. And because I need you to understand something." He took her hands. "When I look at you, I don't see a replacement for Sarah. I see someone completely different. Someone who came into my life when I needed her most. Someone who brought my daughters back from the edge of death. Someone I'm falling in love with." Grace's breath caught. "You're falling in love with me. I've been falling since the day you walked through my door." Richard smiled. "But I didn't want to say it until you knew everything. Until you'd seen this room. Until you understood that loving you doesn't mean I've forgotten her." "I would never think that." "I know. That's why I can say it now." Richard cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Grace Mitchell. I love you for saving my daughters. I love you for saving me. And I love you for being exactly who you are." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But I do." Richard kissed her. Not gently this time. Not carefully. He kissed her like a man who had finally found his way home after years of being lost. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "What do we do now?" Grace asked. "Now we live," Richard said. "Together. All of us. As a family. The girls already love you. They've been asking me to marry you since the birthday party." Grace laughed. "Emma actually asked you to propose. Every single day. She's very persistent. She gets that from her father." Richard grinned. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to trying. To seeing where this goes. To building something real." "That's enough for me." He pulled her close. "That's more than enough." They stood together in Sarah's room, surrounded by memories and dust and the possibility of new beginnings. And somewhere, somehow, Richard could have sworn he felt Sarah smiling. Day 25. The girls left the medical wing for good. Richard had their old bedrooms redecorated while they were at their final checkup with Dr. Reynolds. When they came home, Emma, Lily, and Sophie walked into rooms that looked nothing like hospital wards. Emma's room was blue, her favorite color, with bookshelves filled with every adventure novel Grace could find. Lily's room was yellow, bright as sunshine, with a window seat perfect for reading and daydreaming. Sophie's room was pink, with photos of dancers covering the walls, because she'd decided she was going to be a ballerina. "Daddy?" Sophie threw her arms around him. "It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect." "You deserve perfect," Richard said. "All of you." Emma ran her fingers along her bookshelf. "These are all new books." "Miss Grace picked them out," Richard said. "She said you'd already read everything in the house twice." Emma looked at Grace. "You remembered?" "Of course I remembered. You're Emma, the girl who reads faster than anyone I've ever met." Emma hugged her fiercely. "Thank you. For everything." Lily was standing at her window looking out at the garden. "I can see the flowers from here. The ones Miss Grace and I planted together. That's why I chose this room for you." Grace came up behind her. "I thought you'd want to watch them grow." "I do." Lily turned and wrapped her arms around Grace. "I want to watch everything grow. The flowers, my sisters, me." That night, for the first time in 8 months, the triplets slept in their own rooms. No monitors, no tubes, no machines keeping track of their failing bodies. Richard walked through the hallway checking on each one. Emma was already asleep, a book open on her chest. Lily was curled up with a stuffed animal Grace had given her. Sophie was murmuring in her sleep, probably dreaming about dancing. He stopped at Grace's door. She was sitting on the edge of her bed looking at a photograph. "Mia?" he asked softly. Grace nodded. "I talk to her every night. I tell her about my day, about the girls, about you." Richard sat down beside her. "What do you tell her about me? That you're a good man, that you love your daughters more than anything, that you make me happy." "Do I make you happy?" Grace looked at him. "Happier than I've been in 5 years. I didn't think I could feel this way again. I didn't think I deserved to." "You deserve everything, Grace." "So do you." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "So do all of us." They sat together in comfortable silence, the photograph of Mia between them, the sound of 3 healthy children sleeping down the hall. "Tomorrow," Richard said, "I want to take everyone somewhere special." "Where?" "You'll see." Grace smiled. "I trust you." "I know." Richard kissed her temple. "That's what makes this work." Day 26. Richard drove them to a cemetery. Grace's heart dropped when she saw the headstones. "Richard, what is this?" "I want you to meet Sarah." The girls climbed out of the car, unusually quiet. They'd visited their mother's grave before, but not in over a year. Not since the diagnosis. Richard led them through the rows of stone markers until they reached a simple marble headstone. Sarah Elizabeth Hartwell. Beloved wife and mother, forever in our hearts. The girls knelt in front of it. Emma placed flowers. Lily said a quiet prayer. Sophie just stared, tears rolling down her cheeks. Richard stood behind them, his arm around Grace. "Sarah," he said quietly, "I want you to meet someone. This is Grace. She's the one who saved our daughters. She's the one who saved me." Grace felt tears sliding down her face. "I'm going to take care of them," Richard continued. "All of them. Grace too. I'm going to love them the way you would have wanted me to love them. I'm going to be present. I'm going to be there." He paused, his voice breaking. "Thank you for sending her to us. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for loving us even when we couldn't feel it." Sophie stood up and took Grace's hand. "Mommy, Miss Grace is going to be part of our family now. Is that okay?" The wind stirred the trees. A single leaf drifted down and landed on Sarah's headstone. Sophie smiled. She said yes. Grace knelt down and touched the cool marble. "I'll take care of them, Sarah. I promise. The way I couldn't take care of my own daughter, I'll love them enough for both of us." Emma came up beside her. "Miss Grace, what was your daughter's name?" "Mia. Her name was Mia. Can we visit her sometime? Can we bring her flowers too?" Grace's heart shattered and healed in the same moment. "She's buried in Vermont. It's far away." "We have a car," Sophie pointed out. "Daddy has lots of cars." Richard smiled. "She's right. We can go wherever you need to go." Grace looked at him, then at the 3 girls who had become her whole world. "Okay," she said. "Okay. We'll visit Mia. We'll bring her flowers. We'll tell her about all of you." Emma grinned. "She's going to love us. We're very lovable." "The most lovable," Lily agreed. Sophie nodded firmly. "It's basically our best quality." Grace laughed through her tears and pulled all 3 of them into a hug. Behind them, Richard watched the family he never thought he'd have again. Broken pieces that had somehow fit together to make something whole. "Thank you," he whispered to Sarah's headstone. "Thank you for everything." The wind stirred again. The trees rustled, and Richard could have sworn he heard Sarah's voice, soft and distant, but unmistakable. "You're welcome. Now go live." He smiled, wiped his eyes, and joined his family. 5 years later, spring arrived early in Connecticut. Grace stood at the kitchen counter, mixing batter for a rainbow cake. It had become tradition now, every year on the girl's birthday, the same 6-layer cake that had started everything. Her hands moved automatically, measuring flour, cracking eggs, adding color to each bowl. "Need help?" She turned. Richard leaned against the doorway, flour already dusting his shirt from helping earlier. He'd gotten better at this over the years. Better at showing up. Better at being present. Better at everything that mattered. "They're getting impatient," he said. "Sophie's threatening to start the party without the cake." "Sophie can wait 5 more minutes." "That's what I told her. She said 5 minutes is basically forever when you're 12. Grace laughed. 12. Her girls were 12 years old now. Healthy, strong, alive. Sometimes she still couldn't believe it. "Remember when we weren't sure they'd make it to 7? She asked quietly. Richard walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "I remember everything. The fear, the despair, the moment you walked through my door. I was terrified that day. You didn't show it. I've had practice hiding terror." Grace leaned back against him. "But not anymore. Not with you." Richard kissed her temple. "No more hiding. Not ever again." The kitchen door burst open. Emma, tall and lanky now, with wild curls that had finally grown back thick and beautiful, stood with her hands on her hips. "The cake is taking forever. Sophie's literally dying." "Don't say that," Grace and Richard said simultaneously. Emma rolled her eyes. "It's an expression. She's not actually dying. She's just dramatic." "She gets that from you," Lily called from somewhere behind her. "I'm not dramatic. I'm expressive. There's a difference." Sophie appeared next, pushing past her sisters. "Is it ready yet? Please tell me it's ready." "Almost," Grace said. "Just a few more minutes." Sophie groaned. "You said that 20 minutes ago." "Time is relative. Time is torture." Richard laughed and pulled Sophie into a hug. "Patience, princess." "I don't have patience. I have hunger." "Then eat some fruit while you wait." "Fruit is not cake, Dad." Very astute observation. Sophie stuck her tongue out at him. Richard stuck his tongue out back. Grace watched them with tears in her eyes that she quickly blinked away. This was what she'd fought for. Not just the girl's survival, but this. This family. This love. This ordinary, extraordinary life. An hour later, they gathered around the dining room table. The same table where Sarah used to make pancakes. The same table where 3 dying girls had drawn birthday cards. The same table that had witnessed both endings and beginnings. The rainbow cake sat in the center, 12 candles glowing. "Make a wish," Grace said. Emma looked at her sisters. They nodded. "We already talked about it," Emma said. "We're making the same wish." "You can't tell us what it is," Lily added. "Or it won't come true." Sophie grinned. "But we'll give you a hint. It involves someone in this room becoming official." Grace felt her cheeks flush. Richard cleared his throat. "Just blow out the candles, please." The girls leaned in together and blew. 12 flames extinguished in a single breath. The room erupted in applause. Margaret, who had stayed on despite multiple offers of retirement, wiped tears from her weathered face. The rest of the staff cheered and clapped. "Speech?" Emma demanded. "Dad has to give a speech." Richard stood slowly. He looked around at the faces gathered in this room. His daughters healthy and whole. His staff who had become family. And Grace, the woman who had walked into his house with nothing but hope and changed everything. 5 years ago, he began, his voice thick. "I thought I was going to bury my children. I'd given up. The doctors had given up. The whole world had given up." He paused, gathering himself. Then a stranger knocked on my door. A woman with no credentials, no experience, no logical reason to care about my family. She looked at my dying daughters and told them they were worth saving. Grace's eyes filled with tears. She fought for them when I'd forgotten how. She believed in them when I couldn't. She showed me that love isn't about protecting people from pain. It's about being with them through it. Richard reached into his pocket. I've been carrying this around for 3 months trying to find the right moment. But I realized something today. There is no right moment. There's just this moment. Right now. With our family. In the place where everything changed. He dropped to one knee. Grace's hands flew to her mouth. The girls started screaming. "Grace Mitchell," Richard said, pulling out a small velvet box. "You saved my daughters. You saved me. You gave us a second chance at life when we didn't deserve one. I've loved you since the day you walked through my door, and I'll love you until the day I die." He opened the box. A simple diamond ring sparkled in the candlelight. "Will you marry me? Will you be my wife? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you?" Grace was crying too hard to speak. She just nodded over and over, tears streaming down her face. "Is that a yes?" Richard asked, his own voice breaking. "Yes," Grace finally managed. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Richard slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss. The room exploded with cheers. Sophie started chanting, "Finally, finally, finally." Emma and Lily were jumping up and down, hugging each other and crying. When Richard and Grace finally broke apart, Emma grabbed Grace's hand and examined the ring. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "Not as beautiful as all of you," Grace said. "You're going to be our mom now," Lily said. "Like officially." Grace's heart stopped. "Is that okay? I know I could never replace—" "You're not replacing anyone." Sophie's voice was fierce. "We have 2 moms now. Mom Sarah, who gave us life, and Mom Grace, who saved it." Grace pulled all 3 girls into her arms. "I love you. I love you so much. You're the reason I'm still here. You're the reason I kept fighting." "We love you too," Emma whispered. "We've loved you since the first day." "Since you sang those terrible songs," Lily added. "Since you held my hand and told me I wasn't alone," Sophie said. Richard joined the embrace, wrapping his arms around all 4 of them. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is what I wanted. This is everything." They stood together for a long moment, 5 people who had found each other in the darkest time of their lives and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The wedding happened 3 months later. Small, intimate. Just family and close friends in the garden where Grace had first taken the girls outside to feel the sun. Grace wore a simple white dress. Richard wore a suit that Sophie had helped him pick out. The girls served as flower girls, scattering petals down the aisle and giggling the entire time. When it was time for the vows, Richard pulled out a worn piece of paper. "I wrote and rewrote these 100 times," he admitted. "Nothing seemed good enough. So I'm just going to say what's in my heart." Grace squeezed his hands. 5 years ago, I was a man who had everything and nothing. I had money, power, success. I had a beautiful home and brilliant daughters. But I was empty inside. I'd built walls so high that I couldn't feel anything anymore. I thought that's what strength looked like. He paused, his voice breaking. "Then you showed me what real strength looks like. It looks like walking into a house full of death and refusing to accept it. It looks like holding a dying child's hand and telling her she's worth saving. It looks like loving someone so much you're willing to break yourself open to reach them." Grace was crying now. So was everyone else. "You didn't just save my daughters, Grace. You saved me. You taught me that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to need someone. And it's okay to love again, even when you're terrified of losing." Richard lifted her hand to his lips. "I promise to love you every single day, in the good times and the hard times, in sickness and in health, until death parts us and beyond. Because love like ours doesn't end with death. It just grows." Grace's turn came. She had no paper. She hadn't written anything down. "I walked into your house with nothing," she began. "No plan, no hope, No idea what I was doing. I just knew I had to be here. Something pulled me. Something I didn't understand. She looked at the girls standing behind Richard with tears streaming down their faces. I lost my daughter 5 years before I met you. Mia was everything to me, and when she died, I thought my life was over. I went through the motions. I existed. But I wasn't really alive anymore. Her voice trembled. Then I met Emma, Lily, and Sophie. 3 little girls who were dying. 3 little girls who needed someone to believe in them. And when I looked into their eyes, I saw Mia. I saw my second chance. I saw the reason I'd kept breathing all those years. Grace turned to Richard. You weren't easy, you know. You were stubborn and scared and so determined to push everyone away. But I saw through it. I saw the man you really were underneath all that armor. A man who loved so deeply it terrified him. A man who would do anything for his children. A man worthy of being loved. She squeezed his hands. I promise to love you forever. To be there in the good times and the bad times. To hold your hand when you're scared and catch you when you fall. To remind you every single day that you are worth saving too. They kissed. The small crowd applauded. The girls rushed forward and tackled them both, nearly knocking everyone to the ground. We're a real family now, Sophie declared. We were always a real family, Emma corrected. Now we're just official, Lily added. Richard laughed and held them all close. Official works for me. That night, after the reception was over and the guests had gone home, Grace sat alone in the garden. The stars were out. The air smelled like flowers and possibility. Mind if I join you? Richard appeared beside her holding 2 glasses of champagne. Never. Grace took a glass and patted the bench beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a while watching the stars. I visited Mia today, Grace said finally. Before the ceremony. I told her I was getting married. Richard took her hand. What did you say? I told her about you. About the girls. About how I found a reason to live again. Grace's voice cracked. I told her I still miss her every day. But the missing doesn't hurt as much anymore. It's more like remembering, honoring, keeping her alive in my heart. She'd be happy for you. I think so too. Grace leaned her head against his shoulder. I think she sent me here. I know that sounds crazy, but I believe it. I believe she knew I needed this family as much as you needed me. Richard kissed the top of her head. It doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like love. Love that crosses every boundary, even death. Speaking of love that crosses boundaries, Grace said. The girls asked me something today. What? They want to plant a tree for Mia, here in the garden, so she can be part of our family too. Richard's throat tightened. That's a beautiful idea. I thought so too. I said yes. Good. Richard squeezed her hand. Mia deserves to be remembered. She deserves to be part of whatever we're building here. They planted the tree the next weekend, a cherry blossom because Grace said Mia loved the color pink. The whole family helped dig the hole and place the sapling in the ground. When it was done, Sophie tied a purple ribbon around one of the delicate branches. On it, she'd written something in careful letters. What does it say? Richard asked. Sophie read it aloud. For Mia, who taught us that love never dies, it just grows. Grace dropped to her knees, overwhelmed. Richard knelt beside her, holding her as she cried. I didn't tell her to write that, Grace whispered. She came up with it herself. Sophie knelt down too, wrapping her arms around both of them. Mom Sarah told me, in my dream last night. She said Mia wanted to be remembered. And she said to tell you something. Grace looked up. Tell me what? Sophie's eyes were bright with tears, but also with something else. Joy, maybe, or certainty. She said you kept your promise. She said Mia knows, and she said to tell you thank you for being our mom. Grace pulled Sophie into the tightest hug of her life. Thank you, baby. Thank you for telling me. Emma and Lily joined in, then Richard. All five of them huddled around the tiny cherry tree, crying and laughing and holding each other. This was healing, Grace realized. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of love strong enough to carry it. 2 years passed. The cherry blossom grew tall and strong. The girls grew taller and stronger. The family grew closer than anyone had thought possible. On the 7th anniversary of the day, Grace first walked into the Hartwell house. They gathered in the garden for a celebration. Not just of survival, but of everything that came after. Emma, now 14, was heading to a prestigious prep school in the fall. She'd already announced plans to become a doctor specializing in pediatric oncology. "I want to save kids like us," she told Grace. "I want to be for them what you were for us." Grace had cried for an hour after that conversation. Lily, always the gentle one, had discovered a passion for art. Her paintings hung throughout the house, beautiful images of gardens and flowers and families holding hands. "I paint what I see," she explained. "And what I see is love." Sophie, true to her word, had become a dancer. She took classes 5 days a week and had already performed in 3 recitals. She moved like water, like wind, like something too beautiful to be contained. "Dancing feels like flying," she said. "It feels like being completely free." Richard had changed too. He'd stepped back from his company, delegating more, working less. He spent his days with his family instead of in boardrooms. He learned to cook badly and to garden worse and to be present in every moment. "I missed so much before," he told Grace one night. "I was so busy building an empire that I forgot to build a life. I won't make that mistake again." Grace had changed most of all. The broken woman who'd walked into a house of death had become something else entirely. Someone whole. Someone healed. Someone who'd finally learned that losing everything didn't have to mean losing yourself. "I thought saving your daughters would make up for not saving Mia," she confessed to Richard on their 2nd wedding anniversary. But it wasn't about making up for anything. It was about learning that love doesn't run out. You can lose someone and still have room to love again. You can break and still be whole. Now, standing in the garden on this anniversary evening, Grace watched her family and felt something she'd forgotten existed for so many years. Peace. "Mom. Grace." She turned. Sophie ran toward her, breathless and excited. "Come quick. You have to see this." Grace followed her daughter around the house to the cherry blossom tree. Richard and the other girls were already there, standing in a circle around something. "What is it?" Grace asked. Emma stepped aside to reveal it. Carved into the base of the tree in careful letters were 5 names: Sarah, Mia, Emma, Lily, Sophie, and beneath them 2 more: Richard, Grace. "We did it together," Lily said. "All of us. To remember everyone who's part of this family. The ones who are here and the ones who are watching." Grace knelt down and touched the carved letters. Her fingers traced Mia's name, then Sarah's, then her own. "It's perfect," she whispered. "It's absolutely perfect." Richard helped her stand and pulled her close. "We wanted you to know something." "What?" "That you're not just part of this family, Grace. You're the reason this family exists. Without you, there'd be nothing to carve. No names, no tree, no us." Emma stepped forward. "We took a vote. All 3 of us. We want to officially change our names." Grace frowned. "What do you mean?" "We want to add Mitchell," Sophie said. "Emma Mitchell Hartwell. Lily Mitchell Hartwell. Sophie Mitchell Hartwell." Grace's knees buckled. Richard caught her. "We want Mia to be part of us too," Lily explained. "And the only way to do that is to carry her mom's name. Your name, the name that saved us." Grace was crying too hard to speak. She just pulled all 3 girls into her arms and held them like she'd never let go. "Is that a yes?" Emma asked. Grace nodded against their hair. Yes, yes, 1,000,000 times yes. Richard wrapped his arms around all of them. This is it, he said quietly. This is everything. Right here, right now. This is what we fought for. They stood together as the sun set behind the cherry tree. 5 people bound by love and loss and the stubborn refusal to give up. Later that night, Grace sat alone by Mia's tree. The house was quiet. The stars were out. The wind stirred the cherry blossoms, filling the air with the scent of spring. I did it, baby, Grace whispered. I kept my promise. I saved them, and they saved me right back. She touched the carved letters gently. I miss you every day, but I'm not sad anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful that I got to be your mom, even for such a short time. Grateful that you led me here. Grateful that your love gave me the strength to love again. Grace closed her eyes. Rest now, sweetheart. I'm okay. I'm finally okay. The wind stirred again. A single cherry blossom drifted down and landed in Grace's open palm. She smiled, clutching it to her heart. Thank you, Mia, for everything. Behind her, the back door opened. Richard stepped out, followed by 3 sleepy teenagers who claimed they weren't tired, but definitely were. We wanted to say goodnight. Emma yawned. And tell you we love you, Lily added. And make sure you weren't being sad alone, Sophie said. Because you promised no more hiding. Grace laughed and opened her arms. They all piled in a tangle of limbs and love and everything that mattered. I'm not sad, Grace assured them. I'm happy. Happier than I ever thought I could be again. Good. Sophie snuggled closer. Because we need you happy. You're the best mom ever. One of the best moms ever, Emma corrected. We have 2, remember. Both the best. Lily agreed. Equally the best. Richard smiled at Grace over their daughters' heads. Ready to go inside. Almost. Grace looked up at the stars one more time. Just one more minute. They stood together in the garden under the cherry tree, surrounded by carved names and blooming flowers, and the infinite possibility of tomorrow. Once upon a time, a billionaire's triplets were dying. Then, a stranger walked through the door and did the unthinkable. She believed in them. She showed up. She refused to give up. And because of that, 3 little girls who had 2 weeks to live grew up to be strong, beautiful women. A broken father learned how to love again. A grieving mother found the family she thought she'd lost forever. That's the thing about miracles. They don't come from medicine, or money, or power. They come from ordinary people who choose to love anyway, even when everything looks hopeless. Especially when everything looks hopeless. So if you're watching this story, and you're in a dark place, if you've given up, if you think there's no hope left, remember this. Someone out there is ready to fight for you. Someone out there believes you're worth saving. And sometimes that someone walks through your door when you least expect it, with nothing but hope in their eyes and love in their heart. Don't give up. Don't ever give up. Because miracles are real, and your miracle might be closer than you think.